Go to the end. View the world from that end. Don't think of it. If you think of it, you're not in it. I must actually occupy the end. Go to the end and view the world from that end. Now act in it. How would it be if it were true? What would the feeling be like if it were true? For this is simply taking the end and drenching it in feeling. I assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and I drench myself with that feeling. Then I open my eyes and the world denies it. It doesn't really matter. Let me remain faithful to that end, and then it will come just as suddenly. But strangely enough, I'm going to pass through, it may be not a severe tribulation, but I'll pass through certain trials, certain heartbreaks, certain delays that I can't quite understand. But these, when I reach the end and the end comes suddenly upon me and the whole thing is fulfilled, I will see it was all in order. Everything was in order. My own disappointments in my world led up to whatever I am doing today. When the teacher in my school, I could ill afford the $500 that my father gave me to go to this small school in New York City. And she made me the goat. She called me out before an audience of about 40 students, and she said, now listen to him speak. He will never earn a living using his voice. She should not have done that, but she did it. But she didn't know the kind of person that she was talking about. Instead of going down into the grave and burying my head in shame, I was determined that I would actually disprove her. It did something to me when she said to me, you will never earn, to the class, using me as the guinea pig to show them what not to do. And so she said I spoke with a guttural voice, and I spoke with this very heavy accent, and I will never use my voice to earn a living. Well, I do not know what the others are doing. I haven't heard of them. And there's not a thing wrong in selling shirts for Macy's. You use your voice there too. And I dare say most of them wound up selling groceries or something. I met one of them, and he was selling groceries at Macy's. And he said to me, Neville, what do you do? So I said, I talk on the Bible. You talk on the Bible? Or are you a minister? I said, no, not a minister. I simply talk on the Bible, from having experienced the Bible. But I do not know what they do, if they're still in this world. But I don't think one of them ever earned a living using his voice, unless he was selling groceries, as this one chap I know, he sold groceries. We all went to this school, and this teacher simply singled me out to make some little, well, exhibition of what I should not be doing in class. But I went home and I was so annoyed that I had lost my father's $500 or $600 that he gave me for the 6 months course. That I was determined that she was false, that she was wrong. So I went to the end. I went to the end and actually felt that I was facing an audience, and unembarrassed, and I could talk and talk and talk forever without notes. No notes. And so class came to an end, and I left. She was convinced, and maybe they were convinced. It doesn't matter what they do, it's what I do. So others may be convinced, it doesn't really matter. The whole vast world is yourself pushed out. Maybe I needed that jolt at that moment in time. And so I went through the different tribulations, and finally I found myself doing what I always wanted to do, to tell the story as it happened to me in my vision. I was having all these visions, and they were related, and yet, how to do it? So the first night I started, I think 6 people came. I paid $3 for the hall, and they all came. I sat down. I wore a tux for the occasion. And I sat down and spoke for 10 minutes and dried up. And I asked them to ask me questions. So they did, very graciously. They're all friends. Sent out 50 penny postcards. In those days, you could send a card for a penny. Sent out 50, and 6 came. And out of, well, sympathy, each gave a $1 bill. So at least I paid $3 for the room, and I made $3. And that was my beginning. And then it grew from 3 to 10 to 20, and one night, when I had about 50, a man in the building saw me growing and growing and growing, and he thought he'd put a stop to it. And he was going to one of these New Thought conventions in Washington, D.C. And so he asked me to take his platform. And he had a very large audience of about 500. He thought that would throw me. And so I accepted his generous offer. I learned afterward his purpose was to simply get me out of the place. He thought I would simply make a monkey of myself before a vast audience who were trained differently. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for me, the next time I spoke, my room couldn't take them. I had to move several times in 6 months, and then I moved to an old church at track 1100. So you see, he thought he was going to hurt me. As Scripture teaches, you meant it evil. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. So I got his audience. And then, about 3 years later, for some little infraction of the laws of New York City, they put him away for a couple of years. And when he came out, he asked me if I'd speak for him, and I said yes, without one penny. I will willingly speak for him, because no one else would speak for him. They cut him off completely and said, no, you don't realize how good you were to me. And so I will speak for you. And I went up and I spoke for him without taking one penny. And then he couldn't get going again. And then he and his secretary got into his car, turned on the ignition, closed up all things, and called it a day. So you see, you go through these things, and at moments they seem to be against you, and they're all for you, if you remain faithful to the end. So let us be imitators of God as their children. So then we are told, I was not ungrateful. I was not, I would say, forgetful of the divine image. I remain faithful to it. If I remain faithful to it, let anything happen, and then say within yourself, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. I can go back in my own family. When people tried to take from my father a little equity that he had in the business, and we thought the world came to an end on that day, for he had a large family, and how to feed them, how to support them. 10 children, your wife, yourself, your mother-in-law, and the few servants that we had. And no one would come to see him because they weren't quite sure but what the accusation might be true. And that, on reflection, was the turning point in the family's fortunes. So from being a minor partner, having a very small equity in the business, he turned around without partners and then transcended the wildest dream of the family. And that was the turning point. He kept his vision. He knew he hadn't done a thing that was wrong, and he kept his vision concerning what he wanted in life and what he wanted for the family. So if you have a vision, and by vision I mean a daydream, what would you like to be in this world? Do you know it? Just what would you like to be? How would you like things to be in your world? Well, that's a vision. Well, now, remain faithful to it. Tomorrow you may be given a severe blow, and you may interpret that as being set back. Time will prove it was a turning point in your fortunes. Everything will add up towards the fulfillment of your dream if you remain faithful to that vision. It's all in your own wonderful human imagination. That's God. God actually became as I am, as you are, that you may be as he is. And he takes upon himself all the weaknesses of man. But we say, well, God doesn't suffer. Well, now I ask you a question. If you're in pain, are you in pain? And you will say to me, yes, I am. Well, that's his name. God's name, he has no other name. That's who he is. So you say, I am in pain. I am embarrassed. I am unwanted. That's God's name. He is doing all the suffering because He goes through life with you, as you, until one day he reveals that he's you. It is God and God alone playing all the parts in the world. There's nothing but God. If God did not become as I am, I couldn't breathe. He is my breath. But he doesn't limit me to my wishes. He doesn't limit me to my outlook on life. He plays all the parts. He waits on me just as quickly and as indifferently when the will in me is evil as when it is good. And therefore, he subjects himself to all the things in my world. God is like pure imagining in you, in me, in every being in the world. So you imagine, all right, that's God. And he waits on us because we imagine this, that, and the other. Now you know this, go to the end, a noble end, a successful end in your world. All right, having seen it clearly in your mind's eye, what would the feeling be like if it were true? Drench yourself in that feeling. Now, tomorrow you may be disappointed. Or don't expect it tomorrow. It may come tomorrow. When it comes, it's going to come suddenly and unexpectedly. But remain faithful to the end. And all the little things that will happen in your world that will seem to deny it, they're adding up to it. Everything will add up towards that. I'm telling you from my own experience.